Hey everyone, this is Myles Knight here, and welcome to the Myles Knight podcast. So, welcome to the first ever episode of the Myles Knight podcast. Now, a couple days ago, I did record the introduction to this podcast project that I wanted to do. So, in today's episode, I will be just talking about myself, just explaining like who I am, where I'm based out of, interests, and maybe some other things that I do say about me in this episode. So we'll just go right into it. So, as you see from the name of the podcast, my name is Myles Knight. I am based out of Atlantic, Canada. I was born in 1993, so definitely a millennial baby. What I mentioned in the introduction episode is because we're in April, it is Autism Acceptance Month, and I do want to talk about my life as an autistic person and my perspective. So, when I was 5 years old, I was diagnosed. At the time, it was known as PDD, which is Pervasive Developmental Disorder, which is also just another name for autism back in the day. So, one of the things about being autistic is we have special interests that we're like into. I remember as a kid living in Alberta, I had this fascination of tornadoes, like just how destructive they are, how they look, and just the weather system that comes with it, where heat rises and cold air comes down and it creates like a vortex. So I remember in grade 2 in elementary school, I used to draw tornadoes, especially on like school projects or just like kind of on my homework. So that lasted like quite a few years because at that time in grade 2, it was a year after Pine Lake tornado that happened in July of 2000. And I'll tell you a little bit of a story about that one because what happened was my parents and myself and my brother, we used to go to camping up there, up in that area called Green Acres, which is nearby Pine Lake. And actually, we spend like a night or a weekend up there, like the weekend before the tornado hit. And at that time, it was a EF3 tornado. So right in the middle of like how destructive it can be. So that my obsession with tornadoes happened for a little bit, and then it went to like I had this, and I was kind of a weird kid too because I had this obsession with tarantulas. Like those big hairy spiders you see in the jungles, and that maybe lasted for like a little bit because I actually do remember in grade 5 we were living in an apartment with my brother, or I was living in an apartment with my mom and my brother, and I wanted to have a pet tarantula. And so there used to be a pet store out there called Petland, and you just get like a bunch of pets like cats, dogs, rabbits, reptiles, tarantulas, and all that. So me wanting to get this tarantula, I wanted what it was called a Chilean rose. It was called a Chilean rose tarantula, and it was actually a good tarantula for like beginners to own pets like that. So what they had to do was the pet store had to call the apartment company to get approval of us purchasing a tarantula. So about 15 minutes into the conversation, the apartment management company did not accept it. So I remember running out of the pet store crying. uh, yeah, that was a time. So after that happened, my interest with tarantulas just was like done. Like I just wasn't interested in tarantulas anymore. But just slightly beforehand, during that same year, so I was in grade 5, and that was the year 2004. And one of the biggest interests that came to me, or I really started watching at the time, was professional wrestling, so like WWE wrestling. And I remember her started watching it back in February of 2004, like shortly before WrestleMania 20. And I knew off the bat, like, I wanted to be a pro wrestler. So I kind of knew what I wanted to do as a kid. And now myself am actually training to be a pro wrestler here in the Maritimes. But that's going to be like a separate episode, like very, very shortly. Like, I'm looking forward to that. So, another huge interest of mine that it's kind of been like off and on, but I've always really have an interest to it, but I never really put into practice until like I got into high school for a little bit, and even during the pandemic, and even now is animation. I'll say right up front that I am a huge Disney guy. Like I love the old classic Disney movies, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, Sword in the Stone, Fox and the Hound, and many of those classics. And I'll say this right now, my favorite movie is Fantasia. And the reason why is just you just have like the orchestra playing their music while there's animation going on. It's such an incredible film. It was released in 1940. Everyone should know it's a Walt Disney movie. At that time, it wasn't a successful film at the box office. Made a lot of money, but it wasn't as successful, which is unfortunate. But if you ever seen Fantasia, like you know how amazing it was at that time period. They're able to do that. But sometimes I'll watch like clips of like Fantasia from time to time, and I absolutely gives me flashbacks as a kid. So that'll be like another episode that I would love to talk about is more of like my passion for animation, what I do, kind of because I just do it as a hobby. Like I don't do it as a career, um, but you never know. You never know what the future holds. With that being said, that's gives you like an idea of like who I am, what my interests are, what I do plan on talking about in this pilot project, which is my podcast show. I'm going to get into more depth about what my plans are going forward with this project. So I know I sound like a broken record, but I'll just say again, because of April, Autism Acceptance Month, I do plan on doing some episodes throughout the month talking about life as an autistic person. Now, when we get past April, like into May and in the summer months, I'm not 100% sure what else I'm going to do. Um, so that's just something that I will figure out. But I do like to keep doing this because to me, this is my first ever time having my own podcast show, and it feels very therapeutic to me. So I'm enjoying doing this, even though this is like the second, but really the first episode of this series. So but I'll definitely think of something what I would like to do after the month of April, and I will definitely be planning that out. You may hear more about it when we get closer to the end of the month. So for episode two, for the autism content, I'm thinking about friendships and relationships portion of it because I think it's also very important to explain my perspective and maybe some other perspectives of what autistic people go through when it comes to making friendships, trying to maintain them, even with relationships as well. But that's something that I will be doing for the second episode. So I will be closing this episode right now. I'm looking forward to getting episode 2 released very soon. If you enjoyed this first episode of my podcast project, click that like button, subscribe. Looking forward to releasing more of these episodes. And until the next episode, I will see you then.